and I was a whole lot more aware of being safe. But I worked with those people until August of 1970. I went on R&R. First time I'd seen my wife in about 9 months. We met in Hawaii. Beautiful, government-paid expense, 6 nights in Hawaii. The Hilikai Hotel. Really nice. We, I had to get used to being able to walk on the sand, because if you walking on the sand at night in Vietnam, you could get shot by a guard tower, or you had to go over the wire. So, my wife will tell you, we went. I got all dressed up one night. I took her up to the top of the eye, this big fancy restaurant, top of the Hilikai Hotel. Sat there and we had this big drink, big, 2 straws. It was in a coconut or something. I don't know. And it pretty good though. I had to mix it double. And we were sitting there, and there were some other couples in there with us, and I recognized, because most of them had a haircut just like me, mostly military people. And a loud noise occurred. They dropped a tray or something, and when that loud noise happened under there, helicopter pilots don't like loud noises. Anything that goes bang in those things is not good. Something quit, failed, fell off. So when they dropped that tray, first thing I did, just by instinct, I got it on the table. I was gone. My wife will tell you, she looked around, and the only people you could see were females. There were only women sitting at tables. Most of them, and then you wait a while, and most of them were just like me, peeking up over the edge of the table going, oh, wow. I spent that time on R&R with her. I went back to my company, and I had been informed when I left for R&R that I was going to be transferred back to the company out of Da Nang, and I got in some of the most trouble for protesting that, because I liked working for the Special Forces. The flying was just awesome. If you went there to fly, I was my own boss, except for what they wanted me to do. The flying was great. The people were, I thought I was really getting things done. They told me right before I left that I was going to come back and go to the 3rd Platoon. Thank you, ladies, for coming. I appreciate it. And they told me I was leaving for the 1st Platoon. For the 3rd Platoon. I told them, no, I'm not. Well, I told my platoon leader that, who was a lieutenant, and he went down and told my commanding officer I protested. Well, I spent about 15 minutes listening to the commanding officer tell me exactly what I was going to do, and I did it. When I came back from R&R, they transferred me out of the 1st Platoon, brought me back from Da Nang, and I became the personal pilot of the commanding general of the Americal Division, Major General A.E. Malloy. And I flew for him for my last 90 days. And he brought with him he was there from the 4th Division. When the 4th stood down, he came up to command the Americal, and he brought with him his personal pilot named John Hudson. We call him Big John. Big John had been in the military for about at least 75 to 80 years. He had flown everything from biplanes to whatever else there was. He had more time just sitting in the seat than I had in the Army entirely. And he was an excellent pilot, but I had to learn to fly all over again. Our first mission with Big John, we went down, picked up the general, flying out to a fire base, and John didn't care whether he flew or not. I was flying out there, and I started to here's the fire base, and I started doing what I'd been doing most of my time in Vietnam. It's called a combat approach. You over your target, wherever you're going to land, landing zone, wherever that may be, get you about 1,500 feet of altitude. You pull the nose up on the aircraft, put the pitch all the way down, and kick in the rudder and make it fall off. You try to hit the ground within at least one spiral. The idea is that you spend the least amount of time over the bad guys, because a lot of places we were, the only places I knew we had any good guys were where they were standing, right in that LZ. 100 yards out there, you can just fly along and they'll shoot you. So that's what we did. It's called a combat approach. So I pulled her nose up and John knew exactly what I was going to do, because that's what I always did. And I pulled her nose up, and I started to put the pitch down. He grabbed the aircraft, said, "I got it." Well, that made me mad. Nobody had taken an aircraft away from me in a long time. And here's Big John. But Big John he was a W4. He took it from me and said, "Here's what we got to do with this, when you fly the General. You made this beautiful approach, came back around. He set that aircraft down. I didn't even know it was down. It was so pretty." I learned a lot from Big John. Big John left in about 2 weeks, and I became the General's pilot. And I flew him for the remainder of my tour. And he is the one who decorated me when I left. And he was moving up to the I Corps Assistant Commander and asked me to go with him if I'd spend 6 months. I could go home, come back and spend 6 months as his pilot in I Corps out of Da Nang. Well, I thought about it a little bit, but I'd been there 12 months. I was homesick, and I was ready to go home. I told him no, and he appreciated it. He decorated me and shook my hand, and I left and went down. The next couple of days, I caught a ride down. It was my time to leave. Quit flying, turned in on my flight gear, caught a ride down to Saigon back to Cameron Bay, where I came in. Met some of my buddies going home too. We started talking about who was there and who wasn't. And I was really hurt, surprised and hurt of the ones who didn't come back with us. I left there, finally got a flight home, flew home on Continental Airlines. Flew there to Guam, and from Guam to Washington. Pulled into Washington, and right before we got off the aircraft, a military attaché who worked with returning troops got on the aircraft and said, "Here's the idea. When you get off this aircraft, you need to do one or two things. If you have civilian clothes, you need to go change into them." I didn't have civilian clothes. If you don't have civilian clothes, it's probably your best bet to go directly to the USO and stay there until you get your connecting flight. Now, what the heck is this? So, I did. I went to the USO. Those people there were awesome. We had sandwiches, a shower, phones to make our connecting flight. And it seems, as I later found out, that they were having a big, every time a returning aircraft would come in, or there was word that returning troops were coming back from Vietnam, they'd have a big protest outside. And if you went outside, they couldn't guarantee your safety. Isn't that something? But anyhow, that was my welcome home. I stayed in there. We traveled in large groups because several of us were coming back from here back to, or 2 or 3 of us coming back to Texas. We all got together. We all stayed together. When it was time for our flight, we walked down to the flight in a group, got on the aircraft, sat in the back by ourselves, and stayed there. I got home, and I walking down the concourse there to walk out, and I met a lady. She looked at me and looked at my uniform, because like I said, I had on a uniform. I didn't have anything else. She looked at me and looked at the uniform, gave me this disapproving look, and walked all the way around me like that. I went down to the door, to the place where we met our family. My wife, my mother and dad, my grandmother, my aunt were all there. And it was what a wonderful thing. I went home from there with them, and most of the time I was home. I got 30 days leave. I had to report back to Fort Walters in January. This was Christmas. I wore my uniform once. I was asked to address the local Chamber of Commerce. I wore it one time. The rest of the time, didn't get out much. Stayed primarily with my family and watched the news. And every time I'd watch the news, I'd understand why it probably wasn't a good idea for me to wear my uniform. I got out of Sharon and I spent 6 months in Mineral Wells. I was a tactical officer there for those 6 months. And I went down to the personnel office and I said, what am I going to do now? I want to go to Chinook school, fly big Chinooks. The guy looked at me and said, well, I'll tell you what you're going to do. You just got back. We're probably going to send you back in another 6, 8 months. I said, whoa, wait a minute. I just got home. I don't want to do that. I'm lucky enough to be where I am. He said, well, there is an option. You can get out early. So I took that option, and I left the Army. I spent a year teaching, and I was fully discharged from the Army, and I transferred and joined the Air Force. And I went to their Air Force fixed wing school, and finally ended up being a B-52 pilot. I flew B-52s for 3 years out of Carswell, and left the service in June of 1976. 6.5 years of service, and started my career in education. I'll tell you a little bit about the people. People there I met that work, indigenous personnel that worked with us, wonderful people. There's some pictures over there of my hooch mate. The hooch mate we had for about $2 or $3 a month, kicked in by everybody in the hooch. You got a hooch mate. They cleaned the hooch, washed your clothes, washed your bedclothes, shined your boots. Man, that in itself was a boon to because those poor guys out in the field, they didn't have that. I had a hooch mate, and they were. I had an older one we called Mama San. She was, Wah was her name. She was quite old. Probably wasn't but 40, but she looked quite old. And a younger one. And they did all that for us, took care of us real well. We had indigenous barbers. We had people who sewed patches on our uniforms. We had people who worked in everything from maintenance and working on stuff around the Ville. I met, and then of course I worked with Vietnamese Special Forces. I worked with Koreans, not very much, but the Koreans were very well disciplined. One of the saddest things I ever had to do was go out and pick up a group of Korean soldiers who were riding a deuce-and-a-half truck. You know what a deuce-and-a-half is? Big trucks. Big deuce-and-a-half truck has 8 wheels in the back and 2 in the front. Carries about 16 guys and anything else, called a deuce-and-a-half truck. About 8 or 9 of them riding in this deuce-and-a-half. Somebody set a bomb off under it. It was I got a call to go pick them up. I picked up some very, very severely wounded young Koreans. And one of them, they brought him over the aircraft, and I didn't see a scratch on him. They put a lot of other guys in there who had a lot of scratches on them, missing limbs and some other things. This one guy didn't have a scratch on him. He was dead. I still can see his face. The people themselves, wonderful people. The Mountain Yard people, great people. They were caught up in this war that they really didn't want to be involved in. They lived a very peaceful life. There was a beautiful Mountain Yard village out near one of the Special Forces camp. They had the houses up on stilts. Had pot-bellied pigs or goats under those houses. Beautiful country. The country itself, the prettiest country. Where that camp was and where those people lived. You flew down this valley. You turn right down the Special Forces camp. But if you look, this river, you look back up here, waterfalls coming out of those mountains in Icor. Some of the prettiest country back up in there. Beautiful country. The people were genuine, the ones I worked with. Very confused about what was going on. Primarily, they just wanted to live. And they wanted to live peacefully and do what they wanted to do. If they were caught up in it, I feel sorry for them because in most cases they had no choice. No chance. The enemy, goodness gracious, those people fought voraciously, whatever that word is, fill that in. They fought very hard, and they were very committed to what they did. Got a call one day to pick up a Vietnamese Viet Cong soldier. I thought, well, go out there and beat some young punk. Flew out there. Guy was 77 years old. He had a weapon that he had been fighting. He fought the Japanese. He fought the French. He was fighting us. Anybody that was there that wasn't Vietnamese, he was fighting them, had been fighting them. He was 77. And the weapon he had was nearly as old as he was. I had a chance to pick up, I only saw one true NVA soldier, Vietnamese, North Vietnamese Army regular. Only saw one. That was during that October time. He had marched, and we got him, picked him up. He was sick. He had marched all the way from his home somewhere in northern North Vietnam all the way down to where we were, became ill. He became a liability. So they left him on and he made his way and surrendered. He had on that's the only time I saw an NVA uniform. He had on his uniform. Picked him up, we carried him in, took him to a hospital, and he told them everything they need to know. They probably already knew everything he had to say. The only time I ever saw it. The other times when I was in contact with any enemy soldiers, they were on one side of the weapon and I was on the other side. But they fought well, and they fought, I'm sure, for what they believed in. The leadership, my leadership over there, Malloy was probably one of the best commanders you could have. I watched him fire a full bird colonel for not doing his job. I was on call 24/7 when I worked for him. Called me up one morning, early, and I went to pick him up. We had a VIP pad, his own pad. I went to pick him up. I carried him out to a listening post. And this listening post was on the top of a pinnacle. I'm saying the top of that pinnacle wasn't the size of this room. It had been overrun that night, and the 5 Army personnel who manned it had all been killed. And I had a little bitty pad down there, and I flew him in there. And as I flew him in, there were tarps laid out in front of the pad. I pulled pitch and downwash from that thing, blew the tarps off. Some of the tarps off. Here's these young troops. And they were waiting for an aircraft to come and take them to the mortuary. He went up on the hill, came back down, said, I want to go to Tam Key. Tam Key was a regional headquarters for the MACV department, the people who these men on this listening post worked for. Their commanders were there. He had the commander, full colonel, standing on the pad when we got there. He fired him that day for not having proper security around that pad. And I've always thought that here's a man that commands 27,000 men, and he in turn was concerned about the loss of 5 men. As far as the leadership from above, as a soldier and as a pilot, I didn't get involved in the politics of the thing. Wasn't my place. Didn't have time. I was given a job. I was given something I was supposed to do, and I took that job to heart. As I told you, I was supporting. It was my job to support those young men who were walking in those rice paddies every day, and who were there, whether they volunteered or were drafted. It was my job to take the best care of them I could. Take them stuff, take them where they were told, whatever it was. We've been branded 2 ways by a lot of infantrymen. They hate us when we took them places. They sure were glad to see us come and pick them up. The political leadership, I have nothing to say about that because that wasn't my deal. I wasn't involved in it. I had absolutely no control over that. I think what hurt me the most, and hurt a lot of us, is we got reports from different places about taking out anti-war sentiments on the guys who were there. Hurt me the most. You can be against anything. I'm not a big fan of war. I don't guess any of them are. But those of us who went, and those of us who did what we were asked to do, taking that out on us, that hurt me a lot. There's still a couple of people, one very famous actress that she's not coming to Thanksgiving dinner, I guarantee you. And I don't ever say much about that. I'm hurt sometimes because I see all the things that, and I'm so glad that there are Wounded Warrior projects. People are lined up and welcoming these young men back. But I'm also hurt because we had Wounded Warriors too. We had people that I knew who were severely wounded. I lost friends and I lost comrades, and none of those things were available to them. Not me. I came back, here I am. I'm talking about those guys who sacrificed everything. 58,000 young men and women. Now, if there are any questions, I'll be glad to answer questions. I'll be glad to sit and talk if you have time. I'll show you the pictures. Are there any questions or anything anybody would like to ask? I've never been just a standing deliverer. I like questions. That's how I made it through 4 hours of interview, as they ask great questions. Are there any questions? Can I fill out anything? Anything I may have? Yes, sir.
In all your expeditions across the country, what was the time that you were most scared?
Question was, during my time when I was most scared, I don't know whether it is most scared or not. I guess the time I remember most is when I described that in medevac. I had most time to think about it. I had most time to really react with that type of thing. But most of the time and most of the things you did with training and adrenaline. It's amazing what adrenaline will do. And training and time in country and proficiency. Did that answer your question? Because I was scared quite a bit. I don't mind telling. You know, I used to talk that when I was home, when I was overseas, I dreamed about being home. I got home, I dreamed about being overseas. And it took me a while to get my mind straight. Yes, ma'am.
They talk a lot now about post-traumatic stress syndrome.
Yes,
Did
ma'am.
you experience any of that when you came in? That you know what's happening now?
I think I did to an extent, and that's what I was trying to explain, is the fact that when I got back, I know that, you can ask my wife, I would wake up at night in cold sweat, my mind, like I said, I dreamed I was there at home, and I still loud noises still get in helicopters, loud noises. You listen to them; those things all have a sound. It's like driving your car. You know how it sounds. If the thing starts clicking or squeaking, you know about it, don't you?
Yeah.
Helicopters, same thing. You stay with those little girls, and you stay with them, and you fly them. If it starts making a weird noise or something, to this day, I don't. It took me a while to get back into crowds. Well, not, this is, for a while, this would have been more than, it took me a while. I don't like to sit with my back to a door. I can't do that. And which frustrates her and anybody I go to lunch with, because I go in and we find a place and I go, I'm gonna sit over there, because with my back, I can't do that. And I did have those symptoms. Now that I understand, I would have those cold sweats. I would wake up and with the help of my wife and family and I will tell you, the community, Wolf City when I was young and came back, it was full of World War II veterans. And a lot of the men there were fathers of my classmates. The majority of boys in my class went to Vietnam, went to the Army. And they understood, and they were supportive. And with that support, and support of my family, I have managed it pretty well. Of course, it's, you know, time does a lot of good too. But for a while, it was kind of hard. Yes, sir.
So, with with us being, or with this class, with the students here being about the age that you were before you went to Vietnam,
Yes, sir.
and then going through that experience and being the principal, what advice do you have for us as
Well, I tell you what, I can only speak from that for being an educator. And my advice is you do what it is you're going to do. You do it to the best of your ability, and work hard at what it is you're going to do. I don't care whether you're going to be an electrician, a plumber, a teacher. Do what's necessary. Put your mind to it and do those things that are necessary, and then go and do it to the best of your ability. Because those things, that work ethic means a whole lot. And you can ask my wife. She was a banker for 45 years. Work ethic, I was in education, superintendent. Teachers who teach and go in every day and teach. Young people who do their job in the bank. Do whatever it is that you're going to do. Prepare yourself. Go learn something every day. When I was, even in Vietnam, I learned something nearly every day. If there was a better pilot than me, I tried to learn from him so that I would be a better pilot. If there's a better teacher than I was, I tried to go learn from them to be a better teacher. And I certainly was open-minded enough to go, when I became a superintendent, to go, I don't know everything about being a superintendent. So I talked to guys who worked. So if you're going to do something, go do it. Always be open to learn. Always be open to new ideas, and do the best you can at what you're going to do.
And from a spouse's perspective, let me tell you what I think you are better than anybody I've ever known. Enjoy every day, because you're not promised anything. Make the most of every day. Enjoy your friends, your family, your activities, because there's so many times, and he looks at me over coffee in the morning and said, I've got so many friends who never got to enjoy this with their families. So don't let anything pass you by. Don't let anybody bring you down or rain on your parade. Make every day count.
I feel very lucky. I told you I was lucky. And like I said, when I got back to Cameron, we were going home, and all of my buddies I got together, and I knew that I started finding out that, a buddy of mine named Paul James, he was killed about 4 months in. Don Johnson was killed during Cambodia. I lost two of my classmates in my company, or one classmate and then ward in my company. So those young men are forever young. They're forever young. You go and you see now, you visit the national. I had a chance to go to Arlington Cemetery when I was in Washington, and I go by and look at those young men, 18, 19, 20 years old, forever young. They never had the chances that I have. And so I've been very blessed. And like I said, I get up and I go, it's a good day, because I'm still here. I can find the floor with both feet. I can hear out of at least one ear, and I can see out of at least one eye, and I can take a fairly deep breath. And so I feel pretty good about that day. Anything else? Yes, ma'am. For your instructor? I'll write you a note and tell him you were here.
Yeah, he wants a picture of
Oh, he does? Oh, goodness.
You told a quick funny story about flying out the Mountain Yard family that you evacuated, because I need to hear it, with the conical basket.
Oh. Got a call one day that we had to evacuate a ville on the side of a mountain. and they needed to be evacuated because there was a large movement of enemy troops not far from there, and they were afraid that the troops would come down into the Ville, and they were notorious sometimes for coming down, taking prisoners, confiscating their rice and so on. So we got a call to carry them out. I was the last ship in. I had 5 Americans, 4 crewmen, and that Special Forces flight sergeant, and we were the last ship in. We had to get everybody on board. Well, the only ones left when we got there were some little mama sons, some women, some little kids. We got them all on. I got 26 people on that aircraft. Wow. And thank goodness it didn't have much fuel in it. Wow. I got 26 people on that aircraft. And as we took off from the side, the Ville was up here. It was on the side, and the terrorist rice paddies were down here. So I took off. The thing I couldn't get enough lift on it and enough forward momentum, so it would fall down there. Every time it would fall down, luckily, it was down into one of those rice paddies. It finally started flying down toward the end of the mountain. Well, the only problem was that down at the end of the mountain was a tree line. And I barely got down there with it flying. It was still shuddering and making all kinds of racket. I got to the tree line, and the only thing I could do was pull the nose up and pull the pitch, which raises the aircraft. It's called pitch, cycling. I'm sorry, collective cycling. And pull that collective up under my arm, and that aircraft, those blades go up and pulls the aircraft up. Well, that also causes torque on the rotor and the engine. Well, we flew with under 30 pounds of torque. I pulled that thing up under my arm, pulled her nose up, and she shuddered over the top of that thing, and my pilot looked over and pointed that torque at 45%, 45 pounds of torque. I got it off down there, we got them home, got them out, and we started counting. I couldn't believe how many we loaded on there because we just piled them on there. Dude, they were standing on top of each, laying on there, and little bitty kids and mama son. But after they all got off, and we sent them off down to the place where we had embarked, I said, Chief, what is that smell? And well, it turns out that one of them not only brought all of his family, but he brought a pig, pot-bellied pig, not a very big one, in a conical basket. The pig had a snoot down into that conical basket. Well, evidently the pig was a little afraid of flying because he under my seat, I kept saying, Chief, that stinks. What's stinking in here? And he looked around and he said, oh, sir, I won't say exactly what he said. You can imagine a young, 18-year-old Spec 4 going, describing what that pig did under my seat. And so we got that out of there, but it stunk for a while. I took it back. I didn't say anything. Got me another aircraft later on. A chief, that's his aircraft. He's assigned that aircraft. Crew chief, that's his aircraft. And if you assign him tail 1, 2, 3, that's his airplane. He's responsible for it. So I turned it over to him and got me another airplane. It was. But because when I looked around, I heard this noise, and they were carrying this little pig out there. He was about this long. And he was stuffed in his basket. But evidently he wasn't stuffed hard enough. And he could do something that certainly surprised everybody else. Chemical warfare.
I'm surprised you didn't have anybody airsick with trying to, fly them out there.
Well,
bumpiness and air sickness.
It would show that old airplane. I had to get another airplane primarily because we over-torqued it. Mm-hmm. But it would kind of fly down off that edge, and thank goodness it was on the side of the hill, and those paddies were kind of, and But I never will forget, I looked over at the pilot, he was pointing at that torque gauge, and his eyes were this big. And my eyes got that big around too when I figured out what was going on.
Have you been back to Vietnam?
No, I have not.
Do you want to go back?
I would like to. I know there are tours now. Fact is, I'm a member of the Vietnam Helicopter Pilot Association, and I just got one of my magazines. They publish a magazine every couple of months, and I've got a couple of copies over there. But I just read where one of my old company members, went back. He now has a PhD, or is a medical. I don't know. Anyway, I I flew with him over there, and he has gone back and sent back some pictures. I hadn't even had a chance to read the article, but they do have tours. I would tell you that the coastline, the country's it's a beautiful country. I mean, especially in Iowa, where the mountains are, foothills, coast. They got some beautiful, beautiful beaches. The only problem was we couldn't go to it. I mean, once we left the wire, then we really didn't have any, cross over the wire then. Scaring special forces to leave town one day, leave the country, and they had given him a big bottle of Royal Crown. See those big bottles, big old jar. We were flying along, and he wanted to go back along the coast. It's his last flight. He wanted to go back along the coast and look at the country. And he was back there examining that big old bottle of Royal Crown, and he started to put it up, and it fell out of the aircraft. And which that nearly killed him. And he starts yelling, and I thought we were all going to get died. I thought somebody, So he starts yelling, and my crown, and he's yelling at the crew chief starts yelling in the mic to me, and sir, we got to go around, go back. I'm going, wait a minute, we're out here by ourselves in the middle of bad man country, and known bad man country. It's not like we're going to go look them up. They're already here. And he wants me to go back. Well, okay, so I pulled her nose up, put the fish down, and kicked it around, and she made all this shuddering racket. We went back, and he knew exactly where we dropped it. And I planted it on the ground, and he got out and got it and picked up. Off we went.
It didn't break?
All for, I risked, $300,000 airplane and 5 lives for a big old bottle of Royal Crown.
And it didn't break?
And it didn't, oh no, it fell in the sand.
Oh.
It fell in the sand right at the edge of the water. I'm going, wait a minute now. No, some of those things you think about, now why did I do that? What was I thinking? Anything else? If not, thank you for having me. I appreciate it. I appreciate your attention.
All right, I just want to thank you guys again for coming, and thank you, James Scott, for coming as well. Thank y'all.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
This is the pure number I've ever had that actually got up and walked out while I was talking.